Welcome back to Life Turns, where real emotions and unforgettable stories unfold. Today's story will take you on a roller coaster of betrayal, heartbreak, and one shocking decision that changed everything. So sit back, relax, and let's dive right into it. I always thought Christmas was supposed to be a time of joy, love, and family. You know, the movies show everyone gathered around the fireplace, exchanging gifts, sipping hot cocoa, and laughing together. But for me, last Christmas became something I'll never forget, and not for good reasons. It was the Christmas that changed my relationship with my parents forever, the Christmas I realized that sometimes blood ties can cut deeper than any knife, and the Christmas where I made the boldest decision of my life. I live in a modest but beautiful condo that I worked hard for. Every corner of that place carries pieces of me, long nights working overtime to afford the down payment, weekends decorating the living room just the way I like it, and mornings where I'd sit by the balcony with coffee, staring at the city lights. That condo wasn't just a home, it was a symbol of my independence, my pride, and proof that I could stand on my own 2 feet. But apparently, to my parents, it was nothing more than a convenient gift they could give to my sister. See, my sister, Emma, was always the golden child. Don't get me wrong, I loved her. But growing up, I was constantly reminded of how perfect she was. She got the prettier clothes, the more expensive gifts, and the constant attention. If I got an A, she had to get an A+. If I won an award, she somehow managed to win something bigger. And my parents? They adored her like she was the sun, while I was just some faint star in the background. It wasn't until I overheard them whispering one night before Christmas that I realized just how little they valued me. I had invited them over for Christmas Eve dinner. I wanted things to feel warm, festive, like a real family celebration. I cooked, decorated, and even wrapped small gifts for them. After setting the table, I went into my bedroom to change, but I forgot my phone on the kitchen counter. When I walked back quietly to grab it, I heard their voices, low, but clear enough to sting like poison. "Don't worry, Emma will settle in here soon," my mom whispered. "This condo is perfect for her. She deserves it. After all, she's been struggling lately, and it's only fair her sister helps out." My dad chuckled, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Yeah, and besides, she doesn't really need a place this big for herself. Emma could use this space better. We'll talk to her about it tonight." I froze. My heart slammed against my chest. They weren't just suggesting, no, they had already decided. They had already plotted to move Emma into my home without even asking me. My condo, which I worked my soul out to buy, was now their little Christmas surprise for my sister. I walked back to my room, pretending I didn't hear a thing. My hands were shaking as I tried to fix my hair in the mirror, but I couldn't stop thinking about their words. My mind replayed it like a broken record, "Emma will settle in here soon." When I finally stepped out to the dining table, I smiled, but inside, I was boiling. They were sitting there, laughing, sipping on the hot chocolate I had made, completely unaware that I had heard their little scheme. The anger burned deep, but so did the hurt. How could they? How could my own parents think of giving away my home like it was theirs to offer? Dinner went on with fake laughter and forced conversations. I watched my parents glance at each other, clearly waiting for the right moment to bring up their gift idea. Emma hadn't arrived yet, she was running late, as always, but I knew what was coming. And that night, I made a decision. When the doorbell rang, I welcomed Emma inside with open arms. She hugged me, her perfume strong and sweet, her smile as bright as ever. She was completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. We sat down, exchanged gifts, and tried to enjoy the holiday. But I could see my parents shifting, clearing their throats, preparing to drop the bomb. "Sweetheart," my mom finally said, turning to Emma with a glowing smile, "we have a little surprise for you." I gripped my glass tightly, waiting. "This condo," she continued, her voice filled with excitement. "Your sister has such a big heart, and she's ready to share it with you. You'll be moving in here soon. Isn't that wonderful?" Emma's eyes widened, her mouth dropping open in shock. She looked at me, then back at my parents. "Wait, what?" she asked, almost laughing. "This place? Really?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, isn't that just amazing?" The room went silent. My parents beamed, waiting for my agreement. Emma looked confused, unsure if this was some kind of joke. And me? I sat there, hiding the storm behind my calm face, but inside I was already planning my next move. I knew exactly what I was going to do. Emma kept looking at me like she wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. I could see the confusion in her eyes, the way her smile wavered, as if she was trying to understand whether I had really agreed to something so big without saying a word. My parents, on the other hand, looked as proud as ever, like they had just given their favorite daughter the greatest Christmas gift of all time. I sipped my drink slowly, holding back the tidal wave of emotions that threatened to spill out. Inside, my heart felt heavy. I thought about every hour I spent working late shifts, every extra job I took just to make the down payment on this condo. I thought about the nights I came home exhausted but still smiled because this place was mine. Mine. And now, just because Emma was struggling, my parents thought they could hand it over to her like it was theirs to give. The insult burned deeper than any words I could find. I didn't lash out that night. That would have been too easy for them to dismiss. I wanted them to believe their plan had worked, to think I was too weak or too kind to fight back. So, I smiled, nodded, and said softly, "Of course. Emma can move in soon. I'll make sure it's ready for her." The look on my parents' faces was priceless: relief, pride, and a little bit of smugness. They believed they had won. Emma still looked stunned. "Are you sure about this?" she asked me quietly, almost as if she didn't want our parents to hear her doubt. I shrugged and said, "It's Christmas. What better time for sharing, right?" She gave me a half smile, not convinced, but too polite to argue. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I could hardly taste the food I had cooked. Their laughter sounded distant, their words like echoes bouncing in my head. I just kept replaying their whispers in the kitchen, the way they had planned everything without even asking me. I held my anger close, like a fire inside my chest, fueling me. That night, after everyone left and the condo was silent again, I sat on the couch in the glow of the Christmas lights. The decorations I had carefully placed now looked hollow. I stared at the tree, at the gifts scattered on the floor, and I whispered to myself, "Never again. They'll never use me like this again." The next morning, while most people were still enjoying the holiday, I made a call. It wasn't to my parents, or to Emma. No, it was to a real estate agent. I told them I wanted to list my condo for sale, and I wanted it done quickly. The agent was surprised. Selling right after Christmas wasn't common, but money speaks, and I had my reasons. Over the next few days, while my parents and Emma were happily planning her move-in, I was quietly arranging something very different. I cleaned, packed, and staged my condo for viewings. Every time I folded my clothes into boxes, every time I sealed another carton with tape, I felt a mix of sadness and triumph. Sadness because I loved that condo, it was my safe space. Triumph because I knew what I was doing was going to shock them in a way they'd never forget. Calls from my parents came often. "When do you want us to bring Emma's things over?" my mom asked one afternoon, her voice dripping with excitement. "We should start moving little by little." I smiled into the phone and lied. "Soon, Mom. Just give me a little time to get things sorted." I could almost hear her smile through the line. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger. What she didn't know was that every box I taped shut was another step closer to freedom. The condo sold faster than I expected. The agent called me with an offer that was above my asking price. I didn't hesitate. I signed the papers, sealed the deal, and within weeks, the condo was no longer mine. The money hit my account, and I felt a wave of relief. For the first time, I was ahead of my parents' games. I waited until everything was final before I told them. I invited them over, just like before. The condo was nearly empty now, with only a few chairs and the bare essentials left. When they walked in, they looked around, confused. "What happened to all your things?" my dad asked, his voice laced with suspicion. I smiled calmly. "Oh, I forgot to mention, I sold the condo." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. My mom's eyes widened, her mouth opening in shock. "You, what?" she stammered. Emma froze, her face pale, clearly caught off guard too. "Yeah," I said, my tone light, almost cheerful. I decided it was time for a change. I got a great offer, and I couldn't pass it up. "So, no one's moving in here?" "Not me, not Emma. It's not ours anymore." My dad's face turned red, anger simmering just beneath the surface. "How could you do this without telling us?" he demanded, his voice rising. I laughed bitterly. "Without telling you? Funny, isn't it? Kind of like how you plotted to move Emma in here without telling me. At least I sold something that belonged to me. You tried to give away what never belonged to you in the first place." My mom's face crumpled, torn between anger and guilt. Emma just sat quietly, her eyes darting between us, as if she wished she could disappear. For once, I didn't hold back. I told them everything, how I overheard them that night, how I stayed quiet just to see how far they'd push, how much it hurt to realize that my own parents valued me so little that they'd take away the one thing I had worked so hard for. The words poured out of me like a dam finally breaking. And they sat there, speechless. The room was heavy with silence after I let the truth spill out. My parents just sat there, their mouths tight, their eyes darting around the empty condo that used to be mine. My mom finally broke the silence, her voice shaky and small. "But, this was supposed to be Emma's new start. She's been struggling, and we thought." "You thought wrong," I cut in, my tone firm but not shouting. I had shouted too many times in the past, and it never changed anything. This time, calm words carried more weight. "You thought you could just decide for me, take away something I worked years for, and hand it to Emma like it was a toy. You never asked me. You never cared about what I wanted. You didn't even consider that maybe I earned this place because I deserved it." Emma shifted uncomfortably, her eyes soft, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never asked them for this. I didn't know they were planning it. I swear, I had no idea." She looked at me with guilt in her eyes, and for the first time, I believed her. Maybe she wasn't part of the plotting. Maybe she was just as blindsided as I had been that night when I overheard them. "I know," I said, turning to her. "I don't blame you for this. But I needed you to see, too. For as long as I can remember, I've been the backup, the afterthought, while you were the star. And it's not your fault completely, but it was killing me slowly. This condo was the one thing I had that no one could take away. And then they tried." Emma's eyes welled up with tears. She whispered, "I'm sorry." And I believed she meant it. My dad, however, wasn't so quick to apologize. His pride was too big to allow it. He leaned forward, his jaw tight, his voice sharp. "So you sold your own home just to spite us? Just to prove a point? That's childish." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "No, Dad. I sold it to prove that my life is mine. My choices are mine. You can't keep treating me like I'm just a spare part in this family. I'm done being the invisible one. If that makes me childish in your eyes, so be it. But for once, I did something for myself, not for your approval, not for Emma's benefit, not for anyone but me." My mom finally broke into tears, wiping her face with trembling hands. "We only wanted to help Emma. We thought you'd understand. We thought you'd be generous." That word, generous, set me off. My voice cracked as I said, "Generous? I have been generous my entire life. I gave up attention, I gave up recognition, I gave up my own dreams just to make room for Emma to shine. And you never noticed. You never thanked me. You just expected it. Well, not anymore. My generosity has limits. And that limit is my home. You crossed a line you had no right to cross. For the first time, they looked at me not like their lesser child, but like someone they didn't quite recognize. Maybe it was the firmness in my voice, or maybe it was the fact that the condo was already gone and there was nothing they could do to reverse it. Emma reached out and touched my hand. "Where will you go now?" she asked softly. I smiled faintly, though my eyes still burned with unshed tears. "Anywhere I want." That's the beauty of it. The condo may be gone, but the money is mine, and with it comes freedom. I'll find a new place, one that's truly mine, without the shadow of anyone else hanging over it. My dad grumbled, still angry, but I didn't care anymore. Their approval no longer held me hostage. My mom sat quietly, her tears drying as she stared at the empty walls. Maybe she was realizing the cost of their favoritism. Maybe not. But for me, the decision had already been made. I walked them to the door, just like I had on Christmas Eve, but this time, there were no smiles, no hugs, no warm goodbyes. Just silence. As the door closed behind them, I felt a weight lift off my chest. For the first time, I wasn't scared of disappointing them. I wasn't scared of losing their love, because I finally realized, love shouldn't come with conditions or strings attached. Over the next few weeks, I stayed at a friend's place while I searched for a new home. The money from the condo gave me options I never had before. And though it was bittersweet, I felt stronger. I had chosen myself for once. Emma called me a few times. She apologized again, told me she admired my strength, and admitted she saw now how unfair things had always been. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. Maybe one day we'd rebuild our sibling bond in a healthier way. As for my parents, the calls stopped after a while. Maybe they were too ashamed, or maybe too stubborn. But I didn't chase them. For the first time in my life, I stopped chasing. And that was the lesson I wanted to share. Sometimes family will test your limits in ways strangers never could. They'll assume they can take from you just because you're blood. But at the end of the day, you have the right to say no. You have the right to protect what's yours. And most importantly, you have the right to choose yourself, even if it means walking away. Christmas didn't give me the gift I expected, but it gave me something better, clarity. I realized that my worth doesn't depend on my parents' approval, or on being as perfect as my sister. My worth comes from knowing I worked for my life, my home, my freedom, and no one, not even family, has the right to steal that from me. So, to anyone listening who feels overlooked, undervalued, or taken advantage of, remember this: you don't owe anyone your happiness. Protect it. Fight for it. And never be afraid to close a door that others are trying to walk through without permission. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. And that, my friends, was the Christmas I'll never forget, the Christmas I let them believe they'd won, only to take back my power in the end.